This is Angela DeWitt with the revisions to the Vermilion Local Schools Acceptable Use Policy. We are a one-to-one district, so everyone in grades K through 5 has an iPod Touch. Those stay at the school, those do not go home. And then everybody in grades 6 through 12 has their own MacBook. Those are used in the classroom and are permitted to go home, which is why the acceptable use policy is so important. And looking at our acceptable use policy, I compared it to the readings we did this week along with the Columbus Local Schools policy, and then highlighted some things that I thought were important and noted some things that I think either should be added or changed in some way. So let's get to the first line, which was the reason for the policy. It says your child has requested unrestricted access to the Vermilion Local Schools internet connection. So that's the reason why we need the policy in the first place. The second thing I made note of was the goal. One of the goals is listed here, which is that due to the school district responsibility in preparing our students for the 21st century, we need to give them the access that they will be using as adults. Other than that, I thought this first page was written fairly well. The only thing that I really liked from the Columbus local schools policy was to make a note that parents need to remember that they are legally responsible for their child's actions. Looking here at the second page of the acceptable use policy, another goal has been listed in the first paragraph, and it says our goal in providing this service to teachers and students is to promote educational excellence in the Vermilion local schools by facilitating resource sharing, innovation, and communication. The ratings that we did this week said that there should be a definition section. I didn't see a definition section in ours, but they did definitely give some definitions. They gave the definition of the internet, which is the electronic highway connecting thousands of computers all over the world and millions of subscribers. And they also gave the definition of internet access, which is coordinated through a complex association of government agencies and regional and state networks. In the blue, it says if a user violates any of these provisions, his or her access with the Vermilion Local Schools District and LECA will be terminated, and other future access could possibly be denied. The signatures at the end of this document are legally binding and indicate the parties who sign this have read the terms and conditions carefully and understand the significance. Now, I highlighted that because it seems rather contract-like. I'm not sure if the students would understand that. I think that should be changed a little bit more into student-friendly terms, but it does sort of go along with what I highlighted in the first page about adding the parents could be legally responsible for their children. The first section here is the acceptable use section. In purple, I highlighted that the access must be in support of education and research and consistent with the educational objectives of the Vermilion Local School District. Games and MUDs are not considered an educational use of the internet. Time and bandwidths are costly, so no games or MUDs will be played. Now, I think that should be a little bit more detailed, that section, especially with the educational objectives. Obviously, I would think that doesn't include educational games, but we have students that play educational games in the confines of the classroom, usually games that the teacher recommends or sets up for that lesson. But we do have times when the kids are playing games, and seeing here in the acceptable use section, that could be something that would be not permitted. But being a teacher, all they tell us is, if the students are playing games during your class, we have the right to take their computer and then drop it off in the office, and they get it taken away for a 24-hour period. But we don't do this if they're playing a game during a study hall or anything like that. So I think that should be more specific. I would also add an educational purpose section similar to what Columbus had, and then I would relate it to the discipline policy, because here it just says no games, do everything that is educationally related, and there won't be any consequences. In the section 2, which is labeled privileges, the use of the internet is a privilege, not a right, and inappropriate use will result in cancellation of these privileges. Each student who has access will discuss with a school faculty member the proper use of the network, and the system administrators will deem what is inappropriate, and their decision is final. Now, I teach a language arts course. I was not told at all to make sure the students know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So I am again assuming that they would do this in the confines of the computer class, but again, I am not sure about that. I did pull out that internet is a privilege that can be canceled. I would add somewhere on this page a policy statement that this acceptable use policy refers to any school purchased MacBook as well as the internet connection provided by Vermillion Local Schools. A computer responsibility course must be completed by each student. And I would add these things in because nowhere in this document does it mention the school computers or their internet as what type of devices we are using, as well as a computer responsibility course, and that would be outlined for the computer teachers. On this next page, their security section is very similar to Columbus. I do like that it says do not use another individual's account and never give your password to another user. In the unacceptable use section, I would really make it similar to Columbus's and add about personal safety, contacting people through social media as well as chat rooms, how to keep yourself safe, what should happen if somebody should contact you. And I would also add in there a section about illegal activities. We already have a section about vandalism, viruses, and such. And then our fifth section is about netiquette. I would move this section completely to the acceptable and unacceptable sections and make this more detailed. There are 4 bullet points here, and I really liked Columbus's. I would do it acceptable and unacceptable, make it very detailed, and then I would outline these 4 things as well as other things in those 2 sections. There weren't any changes that I would make to section 6, 7, or 8, but I did find some other things that I would like to add. There is no discipline section here, so I would add a violation section. What should happen if you accidentally access something that's inappropriate? You should be telling your teacher immediately so that that does not come back and reflect on you. 2, you should be expected to follow the rules set forth by the Vermillion Local School District. I would set that up somewhere in there. And then have a separate discipline policy for using the technology. I only know what happens is if you are caught doing something on your computer that's inappropriate, your computer is taken away from you for 24 hours, and then the administration has the right to deem that even longer if necessary. I've had students who have done something in another class and then their computer has been taken away for a week. They are allowed to go to the office and ask to use their computer for a certain class as long as they have a pass from the teacher, and the teacher is the one who is allowing that and then stating that they will return that computer after that specific class if it's something really important they have to do on the computer. And then under the violation section number 4, I would also add something about cyberbullying. Other things I would add to this plan in red. What is plagiarism? What's the consequence for plagiarism? I taught a whole unit on plagiarism, and our students are very confused about what is plagiarism, what is not, what is paraphrasing, using things from the internet. I had somebody make their whole project by just copying and pasting things off the internet, and they didn't understand why that was plagiarizing. So we would need a whole section there for that. Will social media be permitted in schools? Facebook, Twitter, what about at home? Currently, Facebook, Twitter, those things are blocked from the computers during school hours. They are allowed to access those at home, but I think that some teachers would like to maybe possibly use those social medias. We do have teachers that send out tweets about homework, and the students can access those at home but not in school. I do not believe any of our students have Facebook accounts set up. I do know some teachers use Edmodo, which is probably a safer version of Facebook, but I would put something in there more about the social media. 3 would be the inappropriate access to materials section I would add. So again, what will happen if you are accessing inappropriate things? I would put a section in there that the personal files, even though they are your files and they are on school computers, those can be searched anytime. Number 5, wireless devices, how to handle them during the day and the use of the network. We have students who bring smartphones. They're not permitted to have them out at all during school, but they are allowed to carry them in case of an emergency. But I think we should have a section in there about using those at school. Personally, I don't think we need cell phones as much as another school would, because each of our students have computers, so it's not really necessary to use any of those, because anything really that they can do on the phones they could pretty much do on their computers. I would also add a personal responsibility section, letting students know that they do leave behind electronic footprints. Things can be figured out of where you're going. Even though they may or may not actually be caught, they need to be very careful on how they portray themselves. This overall contract, like I said earlier, sounds very cold. I would definitely rewrite this to be more student friendly, since they are the ones that are using these resources. You know, the parents sign this and then send it back to school, but the students and the teachers are the ones that have to abide by this on a daily basis. So I would definitely change that. And then once again, I really, really did like Columbus's, and I would probably rewrite this entire policy to look more like that. And then the final page is what the teachers, the parents, and the students sign. All I had highlighted here was that the teachers are signing saying that they are not responsible for what the students use the network for. I do agree to instruct the student on acceptable use of the network and the proper etiquette. Again, that was not something that was conveyed to me, so I don't know if that is done again in the computer classrooms. The parents sign that they recognize it's impossible for the Vermillion schools to restrict everything, and will not hold the schools responsible for anything acquired on the network, and that they accept full responsibility for anything that the students are doing at home, because they are allowed to take their computers home. And finally, the students are going to abide by these terms and conditions of the internet. They understand that if they violate these, it could possibly be a criminal offense, and that their privileges may be revoked, or school disciplinary action may be taken, or an appropriate legal action. So this was the Vermillion Schools Acceptable Use Policy. Once again, there are a lot of things that I personally would change.